Super zoomed for the thumbnail. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and my cozy little corner of the internet and my office. We're here to talk about my current obsession, which are books. I am obsessed with reading right now. It's been ongoing for like, I don't know, 10, 11 months, almost a year of me just like so obsessed with reading. I made a whole video talking about all the books I've read so far this year, so feel free to check that out if you want to get into it. Today, however, we're going to be talking about books that have made me sob, like full-on tears. I'm not talking about a little teary-eyed, wet-eyed moment, little like, no. I'm talking about it's 1 a.m., you've been reading for like 3 hours already. You get to that moment of the book and you're just like weeping. You're full-on weeping. That's what I'm talking about. These are the books that have made me weep. From joy, from sadness, from relief, just like weeps of all variations. So if you need any book recs to make you feel, I got you. I'm gonna talk about 2 memoirs, a few little fictions, and 1 poetry book. So let's get into it. I'm gonna start off with the memoirs first because they're low-key, high-key depressing, but also so, I don't want to say educational, just like enlightening to like know that this has happened to other people. The first one is called Brandfire by Susanna Callahan, and it's about Susanna, who is a very talented, successful journalist in New York City, and then one day she wakes up and she's strapped to a hotel bed. She can't speak or move, and she's labeled as violent, psychotic, and flight risk, and she has no recollection of how she got there, why she's in this current state, and she's only 24. Throughout this 1 month, literally her life has turned upside down in this 1 month period. So the whole book kind of talks about how she got to this point, what happened, and how she overcame this, because she's like writing this after all this has happened to her. There were moments where her story was so incredibly frustrating. I wanted the best for her, and it like didn't give her that. Mental health like is too much for you, maybe steer away from this, but it's kind of got a happy ending because she's writing this memoir at the end and she's like overcome this feat in her life. So it's kind of a great read, but definitely like very emotional to read about. Next book is called Girl Interrupted. This is kind of a classic, I want to say, also by a Susanna. A weird coincidence that both of these memoirs are written by a Susanna. Anyways, similar kind of storyline. This one takes place in the late 60s. Susanna goes to a psychiatrist and that she's never seen before, and has a session with them, and then they escort her to a taxi and she's immediately sent to a mental hospital where she spends 2 years in there. So she gets sent there when she's 18, and she spends the next 2 years in this mental hospital. And basically the memoir accounts the people she's in there with, how she's treated, how they treat other people, and like all mental health like in the late 60s. And whew, it is heavy. So fair warning on that, and trigger warning for unalive things, but it's a really impactful book. They have made a movie about it with Angelina Jolie and Brittany Murphy. I was really like interested in reading books about like mental illness and mental health. So if you're feeling that same way, you want to like just like a really gripping novel and a gripping memoir, check out Girl Interrupted. Both Brandfire and Girl Interrupted are memoirs, but they are like, they read as almost fictions in a way. So highly recommend, and that is all of the sad recs I have for you. Everything else isn't terribly sad, but you know, there's just sad moments, of course. Okay, my first fiction recommendations are basically all of the Emily Henry books I've read. Book Lovers and People We Meet on Vacation both made me sob, and it's like because the characters get to a point where I just want to jump right in and tell you why I sobbed. I'll give you a brief overview. I'm sure you guys have seen Book Lovers, People We Meet on Vacation so much. Book Lovers is about Nora and Charlie. They both work in why can't I say that? They both work in the book industry. Nora is a book agent and Charlie is a editor. And basically it's like enemies to lovers trope, small town romance, close proximity trope. I just love them so much. They're just like very evenly matched people, and I think that's what makes me love like romance books the most. Is like when the girl and the guy are like just as successful and confident and driven as one another, and that's like why they are attracted to each other. I don't know how to describe this without spoiling the end of the book. You get to the point where like you're wondering if it's gonna end the traditional way a romance book ends, and when ending finally does come, it's just like, it's such a release. Also, there's like layered in aspects of Nora's mom and how her mom made her love books, which is also just really sweet, and it just all ties together really nicely at the end. So I really loved this book. It's one of my favorite books ever. I also love people meet on vacation, great summer vibes. Two friends meet in college, decide to go on trips every summer no matter how busy they are, and then something happens one summer and they don't talk to each other for 2 years until one day Poppy decides to reconnect with Alex and convince him to go on one trip with her and try to see like what's gonna happen, if she's gonna find happiness, etc, etc. All right, next rec I have is probably my favorite Colleen Hoover book, which is Ugly Love. This is a like brother's best friend and friends with benefits trope. The protagonists are Tate and Miles. I love Miles so much. So Tate moves in with her brother, who lives in San Francisco. He's a pilot, so is Miles. And her and Miles kind of like get along, and they decide to just like, you know, get wild and crazy. But tells her, he's like, I cannot go farther than this. Like, this is as much as I will go. I won't be in a relationship with you. I can't feel for you. He's like, I have had too much baggage in my life to like go that far with you. The whole book, you're seeing Tate like totally falling for him, and you want him so bad to just like release and like give himself to her, but he's like holding himself back so much. And then at one part, his POV turns into like prose, and it's just so beautiful. And then you find out what his baggage is, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And so at the end, when things like all kind of bubble up and erupt, so do my tears as they fall down my face. Highly recommend Ugly Love if you want like a very spicy, tumultuous love story and just a good cry at the end. Okay, this one, I love this book so much. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, and Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo did not like turn out how I thought it was gonna be. I did not expect to cry and like feel so much emotion from reading it, but you really did. This is like an iconic book. You've heard of this, people have talked about this. Evelyn Hugo is like a big movie star, and she basically summons Monique, who works at like a magazine, to tell her life story. But Monique isn't like a top writer or anything, so she's so confused why Evelyn Hugo has reached out to her to tell her life stories, but she agrees. She decides to do it. And so the book basically has Evelyn talking about all of the husbands she's had in her life, and also who her true love really is, which is a twist that I didn't expect about a third of the way in, and then you just get hooked and you just want to keep reading the whole book. And then you find out why she chose Monique to tell her story, and that's when the tears hit your eyeballs and just like things start leaking out like crazy. And then there's a letter in the book. Oh my god, whenever a book has a letter in it, oh my god, I need a few days to recover after reading it, honestly. But it was so good. I highly recommend it. If you haven't read her book by now, read it. It's a necessity. And then the last fiction book I'm going to recommend is why did I forget what it's called? The Butterfly Project by Emma Scott. This is the first book I read this year, and honestly, I was going through a little bit of a mental health moment myself. Wasn't in the most solid place, and this book is about two people, Zelda and Beckett. They meet in New York. They're both like struggling in their lives, and she moves in with Beckett in his tiny studio apartment, and she's like trying to make it as a graphic novel. He's working like 3 different jobs, and he has a criminal past. She has a ton of baggage, and you read about their friendship and their struggles, their low points, their high points, and then there's a moment where things just like all fall into place. and that's when I lost it. Like literally last 50 pages, I'm absolutely sobbing reading this book. It's such a great winter read. It takes place in New York in the winter, so like if you want to hold on till winter time, great vibes, highly recommend reading it in like December, January even. Delish. And the last recommendation I have is a poem. Cannot speak. The last recommendation I have is a poetry book, which I feel like I don't see a lot of people recommending poem books anymore, or as often. And this is an oldie, but honestly it's a goodie. Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. When I first got this, I wasn't expecting to like feel the way I did after reading it, and I didn't know like poems could do that to you. But it's broken up into 4 parts: the hurting, the loving, the breaking, and the healing. And my heart goes through all of those 4 parts while reading this. I love a poem book because you can like pick it up at any moment. Sometimes I just like flip and I'll read a random poem on a random day. You don't have to read it in order, but if you do read it in order, there is really such a journey that you go on with Rupi and her life and her experiences. And like you just like feel so much, and sometimes just like you can't contain it anymore and a good sob just breaks out. So I highly recommend picking up one of her books. She has 3. She has Milk and Honey, The Sun and Her Flowers, and Homebody. I think maybe she has a couple more, but those are the 3 that I have of hers, and I really love them. Highly recommend checking out her stuff. And well, that is going to be all for the books that have made me weep and sob uncontrollably. I hope you enjoyed these book recommendations, and if you have any recs yourself that you think will make me full-on waterworks, not even shed a tear, shed a river for my eyeballs, let's share, let's talk. Add your recs in the comments. We'll go back and forth. We'll add each other on Goodreads. It'll be all good time. And if you loved this video, I would appreciate a like and even a subscribe. I do a lot of book videos on this channel. I do DIYs, and I'm also planning on incorporating more like fashion, beauty ones as well as I get into the swing of things. So I'd love to see you back here. And until then, bye. See you later.